June 28, 1575. Japan, Mikawa Province. A river valley, silent before the storm. Nagashino Castle, surrounded. Inside, 500 men hold against 15,000. The Takeda clan has besieged this fortress for months. Food is running out. Water is low. The walls are cracking under constant bombardment. One by one, the defenders are falling. No relief army has come. No message from outside. The Takeda cavalry waits outside, patient as predators circling wounded prey. Katsuyori Takeda, son of the great Shingen, commands this siege personally. He is confident. He has every reason to be. The Takeda cavalry is the most feared fighting force in all of Japan. They have never lost a siege. They have never lost an open battle. But something is coming that Katsuyori does not understand. Something that will end the age of the samurai warrior forever. Something built not from courage or steel, but from smoke, fire, and peasant hands. How did a warlord with a third of the men destroy the greatest cavalry in Japan? How did common foot soldiers end 400 years of samurai cavalry dominance? The answer begins not on this battlefield, but a generation earlier. With a man so feared, other warlords refused to face him in open battle. A man who never lost. Takeda Shingen. Shingen Takeda was born in 1521 into a powerful mountain clan. His home province of Kai was cold, rugged, and poor. The mountains made farming nearly impossible, so the Takeda became warriors instead. Shingen seized power from his own father at age 21. He drove him into exile without a second thought. Then Shingen built something no one in Japan had seen before. A cavalry force trained to move like water, fast, fluid, and overwhelming. His horsemen wore armor painted blood red. His banner read, "Swift as the wind, quiet as the forest, ferocious as fire, immovable as a mountain." These were not words. These were promises Shingen kept every time he rode to battle. He fought his rival Uesugi Kenshin 5 times in the same valley over 12 years. 5 battles, 5 draws. Neither man could crush the other. But holding Kenshin, Japan's greatest duel fighter, to a draw proved Shingen's cavalry supreme. Every other warlord in Japan watched and grew afraid. In 1572, Shingen made his move toward Kyoto and control of all Japan. He marched with 25,000 men through the winter mountains. At Mikatagahara, he crushed the army of Tokugawa Ieyasu in under 2 hours. Ieyasu fled back to his castle in such panic he soiled himself on the road. Kyoto, and total control of Japan, seemed within Shingen's reach. Then fate intervened. In April 1573, during the siege of Noda Castle, Shingen was shot. A single arquebus ball from a defender on the walls. The wound became infected. There was no treatment that worked. Takeda Shingen, the Tiger of Kai, the man who had never been defeated in the field, died quietly in his tent. He was 52 years old. His last order to his generals, "Hide my death for 3 years. Keep the army moving. Let no one know I am gone." The generals obeyed for a while. But a secret that large cannot hold forever. Within months, word spread through every province in Japan. Shingen was dead. His son Katsuyori inherited the clan at age 28. He was brave, he was proud, he was driven, and he desperately wanted to prove he was his father's equal. But Katsuyori had a problem the great Shingen never faced. His father's victories had turned the Takeda cavalry into living legend. And legends are very difficult things to use as actual weapons. Every battle Katsuyori fought, he felt the weight of his father's ghost pressing down. He could not retreat. He could not show doubt. He could not adapt. A Takeda does not show weakness. A Takeda always charges forward. While Shingen built an empire on horseback, a different man was building one on ideas. Oda Nobunaga, lord of Owari province, he was born in 1534 into a minor noble family on the edge of relevance. As a teenager, he walked barefoot through markets and ate alongside common peasants. The other nobles called him the fool of a wari. He did not care what they called him. He cared only about winning. Nobunaga had no patience for tradition, ceremony, or the feelings of his generals. He broke every accepted rule of Japanese warfare, one by one. He recruited ashigaru, peasant foot soldiers, into his personal army, something the samurai class considered beneath contempt. He treated logistics, supply chains, and troop positioning as seriously as sword technique. He studied his enemies obsessively before engaging, looking for weaknesses no one else noticed. Most importantly, Nobunaga looked west, toward the sea. Portuguese traders had brought arquebuses to Japan in 1543. Every other daimyo treated the strange, heavy guns as curiosities to be displayed. Nobunaga recognized them as the future of warfare. He purchased hundreds, then thousands. He trained peasant soldiers to fire them. At the Battle of Anagawa in 1570, Nobunaga combined arquebuses with long spear formations for the first time. The result shocked every observer on the field that day, but the weapons still had limits. After one shot, reloading took 30 full seconds. 30 seconds was enough time for a cavalry charge to close the distance and break the line. Nobunaga knew this problem existed. He had been thinking about how to solve it for years. The answer, he believed, was not a better weapon. It was a better system. In the spring of 1575, news reached Nobunaga in Kyoto from the east. Katsuyori Takeda had marched his army out of the mountains. 15,000 soldiers, his finest cavalry, his father's undefeated legacy. His target, Nagashino Castle, held by Nobunaga's ally, Okudara Satomasa. 500 defenders, surrounded on all sides, outnumbered 30 to 1. Katsuyori was certain the castle would fall within days. He was wrong. The defenders fought with the absolute desperation of men who had no other choice. Week after week passed. The castle still held. Supplies inside the walls were nearly gone. No food, little water, fewer men every morning. The defenders knew they could not survive another week without help from outside. Someone had to get through the Takeda lines and reach Nobunaga's army 40 kilometers away. What happened next would become one of the most famous acts of sacrifice in Japanese history. Inside the castle, a young soldier named Tori Tsunaemon stepped forward. He volunteered for a mission that was almost certainly a death sentence. He would slip out of the castle at night, cross the Takigawa River in the dark, move silently through 15,000 enemy soldiers camped on every side, and carry a message to Nobunaga's army, 40 kilometers through enemy-controlled territory. The defenders gave him the message. He tied it to his body and slipped into the night. In complete darkness, Tori entered the cold river and swam without making a sound. He crawled through mud, moved through shadows, held his breath when patrols passed close. Somehow, through luck, skill, or sheer will, he got through. He found Nobunaga's advance camp and delivered his message before dawn. Nobunaga read it and made his decision before Tori had finished speaking. He would march to Nagashino and meet Katsuyori Takeda in open battle. His generals immediately argued against it. The Takeda cavalry was unbeatable on open ground. Nobunaga stopped them. The cavalry is only unbeatable on ground of its own choosing. We will choose different ground. Tori Tsunaemon volunteered for one final mission. He would return to the castle and deliver a message. Help is on the way. Hold 3 more days. He began the journey back, through Takeda lines in the darkness before dawn. He was captured near the castle walls as the sun rose. Katsuyori's soldiers bound him, carried him to a cross set directly before the castle gates. They gave him a simple choice. Tell your comrades inside that no army is coming, and we will let you live. Tori looked up at the faces watching from the castle walls above him. He screamed with everything he had. Nobunaga is coming. Hold 3 more days. Katsuyori's soldiers drove a spear through him before he could say another word. The men on the walls heard. They understood. 3 days. Nobunaga marched with 38,000 men at a pace that shocked his own officers. With him came Tokugawa Ieyasu, still carrying the shame of Mikatagahara in his bones. They pushed through mountain passes that most commanders would have avoided entirely. 3,000 of Nobunaga's men carried arquebuses, the largest concentration ever assembled in Japan. 3,000 more carried the raw materials for what Nobunaga was already building in his mind. Nobunaga walked the Shidahara plain himself before his army arrived in full. He measured the ground, checked the riverbanks, studied the sight lines. The plain was narrow, bordered by rivers on both sides. Cavalry could not flank around. His engineers began building a wooden palisade across the entire width of the plain. Long sections of heavy fence, gaps every 3 meters, exactly wide enough for a gun barrel. Katsuyori received reports of the approaching army during the night. His advisors laid out the options: break the siege and withdraw, or stand and fight. Every senior general in the Takeda army recommended withdrawal. Katsuyori refused. His father had never retreated before an enemy. He would not be the first. He would destroy Nobunaga here, on this plain, and finish the castle siege afterward. The night before the battle, Nobunaga's men worked by torchlight to complete the palisades. Behind the wooden fence, Nobunaga arranged his 3,000 arquebusiers into 3 rotating lines. The drill was simple: front line fires through the gaps, steps back, second line steps forward and fires, third line fires. By the time the third line has fired, the first line has reloaded and is ready again. Continuous fire, no gap, no pause, no mercy. No cavalry in Japan, or anywhere in the world, had ever faced this kind of organized, sustained fire. The Takeda cavalry had defeated everything they had ever faced. The sun rose over the mountains east of the Shidahara plain. Across the field, the Takeda cavalry formed into 12 attack columns, red banners snapping in the morning wind. They waited for the command they had been bred and trained their entire lives to follow. Katsuyori gave the signal. The war drums began, deep, rhythmic, bone-shaking. 12 cavalry columns surged forward simultaneously. The ground shook under the weight of thousands of hooves accelerating into full charge. The Takeda war cry rose over the plain, a sound that had made armies break and run for 20 years. They hit full speed at 200 meters from the palisades, and the arquebuses answered. The first volley tore through the front rank of charging cavalry. Men and horses screamed and fell, tumbling across each other in the mud. The cavalry behind them did not stop. They could not stop. They were already at full speed. The second rank of arquebusiers stepped forward and fired before the smoke from the first volley had cleared. Then the third rank. The horsemen, who reached the palisades, found the gaps too narrow to pass through at speed. They crashed into the heavy wooden fence and were cut down from the other side. The first Takeda charge broke apart and fell back, leaving hundreds dead on the field. Katsuyori, watching from behind his lines, could not process what he had just seen. His cavalry, the finest in Japan, the army that had never been stopped in open battle, had just been stopped. He ordered a second wave forward. His surviving generals rode to him and begged him personally to withdraw. He ordered the second wave forward. The arquebuses fired again. The second charge broke the same way the first had. Then the third charge, then the fourth, then the fifth. The ground in front of the palisades was carpeted with fallen men and horses. Behind the fence, Nobunaga's arquebusiers had not moved a single step from their positions. Katsuyori's finest generals were dead in the mud of the Shidahara plain. Yamagata Masakage, the Red Devil, undefeated in battle for 30 years, dead. Baba Nobuharu, who had survived 57 battles without a single wound, dead. Naito Masatoyo, who had ridden with Shingen himself since the very beginning, dead. The core of what had made the Takeda clan great, the men who built Shingen's legend, was gone in a single morning. After the sixth failed charge, something shifted in the Takeda army. Not courage. The Takeda warriors had fought and died bravely every single time. But the belief that cavalry was invincible, that the Takeda name guaranteed victory, that belief died on the Shidahara Plain on June 28, 1575. And everything that belief had held together started coming apart immediately. Nobunaga gave the order to advance. His infantry pushed through the gaps in the palisades and moved on to the open field. The Takeda army, already shattered, already running, scattered into the surrounding hills. 10,000 Takeda soldiers did not make it back to the mountains that evening. Among the survivors stumbling through the forest was Katsuyori Takeda himself. Military historians would later compare the Battle of Nagashino to the Battle of Agincourt. At Agincourt, in 1415, English longbowmen destroyed French heavy cavalry in almost identical fashion. Both battles featured a defending infantry line with ranged weapons stopping a charging cavalry force. But Nagashino was different in one crucial and permanent way. An English longbow required 10 years of daily training to use with any real effectiveness. An arquebus could be taught to a common farmer in 3 weeks of drilling. This was the thing Nobunaga had understood that no other daimyo in Japan had grasped. The age of the specialist warrior, the man who trained for decades to perfect a single weapon, was ending. The age of organized, disciplined, interchangeable mass infantry was beginning. A peasant with a gun and 3 weeks of drilling could kill a samurai who had trained since childhood. That single reality, once demonstrated publicly and undeniably on a battlefield, changed Japan permanently. Before Nagashino, battles in Japan were decided by cavalry charges and individual samurai combat. After Nagashino, every major warlord in Japan began purchasing arquebuses as fast as they could be imported. The samurai code, built around personal honor, individual combat, and noble lineage, was suddenly beside the point. A warrior who stepped forward to challenge an enemy to honorable single combat would be shot by the man next to him. Nobunaga had not just won a battle. He had made an entire model of warfare obsolete in a single morning. He was not the first person in history to accomplish this. In Europe, the same transformation had unfolded at Crci in 1346, where English arrows ended French cavalry dominance. At Pavia in 1525, Spanish arquebusiers ended the age of the armored French cavalry knight permanently. Nagashino was Japan's Pavia. 50 years later, same weapon, same result, same permanent consequence. The gun and the palisade had beaten the sword and the horse. It had happened in France, in Spain, in England, in Italy. Now it happened in Japan. Everywhere, always, without exception. The age of gunpowder had arrived in East Asia, not in a merchant's bag or a missionary's letter. It arrived at the tip of 38,000 marching feet and 3,000 smoking gun barrels. Katsuyori Takeda escaped the battlefield, but not his fate. The Takeda clan had lost its finest generals and most of its cavalry in a single morning. The allies, who had pledged loyalty out of fear and respect, began to defect immediately. One by one, the territories that had carried Takeda banners changed their allegiances. Katsuyori fought on for 7 more years, clawing to hold what remained of his father's empire. In 1582, Nobunaga launched his final campaign against the last Takeda holdings. His allies surrounded Katsuyori from 3 directions simultaneously. One by one, Katsuyori's last loyal vassals surrendered, defected, or disappeared into the mountains. Katsuyori was left with a handful of men on the slopes of Mount Tenmokuzan in the cold spring of 1582. There was nowhere left to run, no ally left to call on, no army left to raise. On that mountain slope, Katsuyori Takeda killed himself. He was 37 years old. The Takeda clan, which had ruled its mountain province for 300 years, ceased to exist that day. The man who had made peasants into weapons had finally erased the legend his own weapon had created. Today, the Shirahara Plain in Aichi Prefecture, Japan, looks almost peaceful. Farmers grow rice in the fields where Takeda cavalry charged and died. A small stone monument marks the approximate line of Nobunaga's palisades. You can stand exactly where Nobunaga stood and look across the same valley he measured before the battle. The rivers that protected his flanks are still there. The mountains that boxed the cavalry in have not moved. Only the armies are gone. Only the drums are silent. But the lesson Nagashino taught is not gone. It has never left. The tactician who wins does not use the weapon his enemy fears. He uses the weapon his enemy does not yet understand. If you want to see more battles that rewrote the rules of war, subscribe. There are more stories to tell.